Yes, good morning, all of you. Good morning, all the participants, and we welcome you, Miss Namita from Resolve 360. So let me introduce. I hope you have all have heard about the ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. I've been teaching ADR for couple of years, and I keep discussing what are the issues and challenges with ADR. ADR, I would say, is not that much successful. That was I would say like it's supposed to go again. That's why there are a lot of concerns regarding cost also, and it's sort of time taking. We thought ADR will solve the issue as it is possible, but again there are issues and challenges are there. And then ODR again is the next step further. To again, I have interacted with a couple of the platform like CODR and Sama and other than the founders, and heard them in this couple of webinars. Again, it's reducing cost compared to the ADR. ADR again is like thought of to save time and money, and then the next stage, like I would say, is the ODR, right? So we will see this kind of thing today's deliberation and the presentation by Namita. Let me introduce Miss Namita. I hope my screen is visible. Yes, can you see the PPT? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let me introduce Ms. Namita. Namita Shah is the co-founder of Resolve 360, a legal tech company recognized by the Department of Justice, Government of India, and specializing in online dispute resolution via electronic arbitration and mediation. The work has been featured in the Business Today magazine, the Hindu Daily, Business World, Artificial Law International publication, popular blogs like Your Story, The Chronicle, UT Awas, and the Legal Forecast are radio shows on 94.3 and 91.5 FM. Namita has been recognized
Yes,
among
sir.
the top 60 of the Women Transforming India 2018 initiative by the Government of India. She is a chartered accountant with the gold medalist, CPA from USA and the LLB. She is an alum of Government Law College and HR College. He has studied cybercrime management from the Asian School of Cyber Laws. She is passionate about writing, learning, teaching, and mentoring. She writes about her learning through her life and work under the brand Empowering Minds. She has delivered several lectures and video series on the various topics for the Indian government, MBA college, and corporate the panels. So with this introduction, I, on behalf of the Parul Institute of Law, Parul University Vadodara, welcome for today's guest session on the ODR and the legal startup. Before this, I would request our Dean, Professor Akil Sayed, to formally welcome our guest. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Thank you very much, Miss Namita. So nice of you that you have spared your time from your busy schedule for our student. I'm very much happy that despite of your continuous busy schedule, I learned from Dr. Gupta it was very difficult to take your appointment for normal proceeding also, and you have spared 1 hour from your schedule. So it's so nice of you. On behalf of Parul Institute of Law, Faculty of Law, and on my personal behalf, thank you and cordially welcome you on this virtual platform of Parul Institute of Law, Faculty of Law, Parul University. And at the same time, I also request you that once the pandemic has been over, please do come to our faculty, our university. Please do visit and please give some on-hand practical training to our law students. Thank you very much. Dr. Gupta.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Ms. Namita to proceed with the session. Over to you.
Sure. Firstly, I have to say thank you, Dr. Gupta, for such a kind introductions. You're very, very kind, and thank you for inviting me over. Thank you, Dr. Sayed, for the very warm welcome, and I will definitely love to come to your university and to even give a hands-on experience on how our systems work and what we do, and how ODR is actually redefining as we go forward the entire dispute resolution space. And sir, of course, it's always a pleasure to talk about ODR, to talk about what we are doing, and also, specifically when we look at talking to people who are going to be the future of law, to talk and discuss with them, get their views, and try to, make a holistic movement towards ODR in the country. So thank you for giving me that opportunity, and welcome all of you. Good morning to everybody. Thank you for taking time out on a Saturday morning to listen to me and to learn more about ODR, and to, of course, share your thoughts as well. Before I start about how we're going to structure the next 45 minutes together, just some housekeeping rules that if at all you do have any question, any thought, anything, please feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat box, and I will address everything together as well. In case something gets left out and you still want to know something else or you want to clarify something else, I will be sharing my details at the end of the talk. So please feel absolutely free to reach out. I'll always be more than very happy to discuss further with you on ODR and what opportunities are there in this space. So, with that, I'll begin my talk for today. How I structured it is, first we'll talk a little bit about ADR, talk a little bit about ODR, what it is, what it looks like right now, what it may look like in the times to come, and then talk about my journey and how Prisol 360 came about and what we're doing at Prisol 360. So, before we delve into that, I would love to hear from any of you who'd like to unmute and explain as to what, according to you, is ADR, and if you've heard anything about ODR or what you think ODR is, and we could take the conversation ahead from there. So, anyone who'd like to unmute themselves, and I'm sure all of you are law students, almost to be lawyers, so I'm sure you know what ADR is. So, anyone who'd like to talk about, in their words, in without any legal jargons, what ADR is and what they think ODR is, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
ADR is actually alternative dispute resolution, where we do not go to the courts directly, and it is basically out of court settlement, and we have arbitration, mediation, conciliation, negotiation, judicial settlement, and all in this ground.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Very, very aptly, very, very correctly said that any mechanism that does not involve the courts comes in the purview of alternative dispute resolution, or as we like to call it, appropriate dispute resolution. And why? So I'll talk about why ADR actually is probably the appropriate dispute resolution when it comes to the first resort of resolving disputes. Anyone else would like to talk about what they think ODR is, or if they've had any experience or in their minds what ODR is?
Hello, ma'am. I think it's exactly as Vaishnavi explained, but online ODR it means it's maybe in a virtual platform as we are sharing right now with the client and the mediator.
Correct. Thanks, Dana, for that. Yes, absolutely. ODR is nothing complicated. It is basically whatever we are doing in ADR, but using some sort of technology to do it. So, even for example, first let's break the myth that ODR is something very, very technical and something that only engineers can do, or something that somebody from a law background cannot do. It's nothing like that whatsoever. If you're using a phone to call somebody and trying to negotiate with them, that's ODR. If you are using WhatsApp to say, okay, let's settle at this amount, that's also ODR. If you've used applications like net banking and there has been a problem, or if you've used any UPI, if you've used Paytm, Google Pay, and if there is an error and you click on the chat box over there and talk about your query, that is ODR. So all of that together comes in the purview of ODR, full form of which is online dispute resolution. So to say, it can be said that it is a modernized version of ADR, and it is gaining popularity as we go ahead, especially in light of the current situation. Now, let me talk a little bit more about major components of ADR and how we can do them virtually. So, as Vaishnavi, you also mentioned, there is arbitration, and then there is mediation, conciliation, and negotiation. And I'm sure all of us do know that arbitration is more adjudicatory in nature, where there is an arbitrator who listens to both sides of the story. It sort of mimics the entire court proceedings, and then there is a judgment or an award by the arbitrator. That entire part is arbitration. I'm sure all of us know it, but just quickly recapping it. And coming to the other non-adjudicatory mechanisms, they are mainly mediation, conciliation, very slight difference between the two. And there's negotiation and few other methods. Essentially, in those, it's the parties who voluntarily decide to come together, and there is a mediator or a third party or a neutral who kind of helps the parties to look at what could be a common grounds of settlement and how they can actually pursue a mid ground instead of fighting it in courts or litigating about it. So essentially, these are the aspects mainly of ADR, and doing them electronically, doing them even a small part of them, if you do them using technology, all of that comes under the purview of ODR. So, before I move forward into a little more technicalities about ODR, any questions so far? Any thoughts so far about ADR, ODR, anything at all? Anything you agree with, don't agree with? Okay, so I'm assuming that we all are on the same page, at least when it comes to what ODR is. Okay, now let me tell you one thing. Today, if you also read how the human mind and the human culture is moving forward, we are all becoming very, very impatient as humankind. And by this, what do I mean? Let's say if you've tried to book an Uber and if you see that it's 4 5 minutes away, you'll wait for it and take the Uber and go. But let's say if it is showing that it is 15 or 20 minutes away, what we often tend to do is that we cancel it and try to search for another cab which is closer, or try to find a cab on the road and take that. Now, if we cannot even wait 20 minutes for a cab ride, can you imagine somebody has to actually wait for years and years and years for justice in our court systems? That itself will clarify that today, when all transactions, when all business, when all meetings, when everything is happening at an instance, you are asking somebody to go to court and to fight for years and decades together to find an outcome. Is that really justifiable? Can you really say that for at least certain categories of matters, if you go to court, you're actually getting a result or you're actually getting an outcome? And that is the very problem that ODR addresses very, very effectively. That is the very problem which ODR gives a better solution to. Okay, let me put things in perspective. Now, I do agree that there are certain kinds of cases where we will always require the court intervention and nothing can change that. No alternative mechanism can actually address that. For example, let's say, there is some sort of a crime involved. There is something to do with public policy. There is some terrorist activity. All of those aspects today completely are under the purview of the courts, and no other alternative mechanism can actually dispense justice in those matters. That is one side which we completely leave out. But even after we leave out those kind of disputes, there is still a large category, a large pool, and large volumes of disputes that technically do not have anywhere to go. If they go to courts, it's just going to go on for years and years and years. And the outcome that we'll get after years may not really be proportionate to the problem itself in the first place. So to give you an example, let's say you bought, your friend needed some money and you lent, let's say for example, 50,000 rupees to your friend. After that, that friend completely disappears. How are you going to recover that money? Are you really going to go to court and file a case against that friend for 50,000? And you, as budding lawyers, already know the cost, the time, the efforts, and the complexities that are going to be involved for you to actually go to court to recover that money. So in those cases, what happens? Courts, technically, there is no option, there is no solution for these kind of disputes over there. You may still pursue going to court, all of that, but it comes at a huge cost, which is probably not worth it if you want to recover a smaller sum. So I'm going to focus on those disputes initially. In those cases, what options do you have? You have the option of then looking at ADR, which is doing these processes physically. Now, arbitration as it exists today in the country, we already know there are these large institutions that offer these kind of arbitration services, but they are mainly used by very large corporates. They are mainly used for, let's say, some inter-country disputes or some large business disputes. When it comes to actually doing it for the common man, these kind of arbitral institutions may not really be a solution. Coming to mediation, how many times are you actually going to be able to find a mediator? You go to the mediator, the other party has to agree to come to the same mediator, you find a time, go over there, try to discuss the problems and get a solution. It is possible and it happens, but there are so many inefficiencies in those processes. The same inefficiencies are solved by way of ODR. And how? Let me tell you that. Okay, today, how many of us here have used net banking or have used payment wallets? If you could, just type yes in the chat box, or let me know, or raised hands or anything like that. So I do believe that A lot of us would have at least once in our lives used this kind of technologies. Now, let me tell you one thing. About 8 years back in 2012 and 2013, net banking was accessed by less than 5% of the country. Today, over 60% of these financial transactions are done by way of technology. Over 60% of every transaction done, including banks, including financial institutions, these wallets, everything, all of that is done today by use of technology. That's the level of penetration of technology in our country, and that's the convenience it provides. Now, can you imagine that a generation which is, let's say, 5 years younger than you, do you think that they'll even know probably how to write a check? They may not know, because they'll know only how to transact by way of net banking or by way of RTGS or by way of payment wallets. That is how redundant some of the processes are. And especially when we talk about the legal field, yes, the legal field is making progress for sure, and there is no denying that. But this progress needs to be made at a much faster pace, because life and because business is only growing at such a fast pace. So the legal field and the resolution mechanism in our country also has to catch up to that, if not stay ahead of the game. And that is where ODR gives a perfect fit. Okay, now all those of you who said that you had used, some sort of a payment wallet or an online banking transfer or something like that, let me ask you one more question. Had you used this before March of 2020? Had you used any form of net banking or payment wallet transactions or any sort of e-commerce transactions before March 2020? Okay, we have one no. We have some yes. Others, had you used it before? Okay, we do have few yeses. Now let me tell you one thing. After, let's say, March 2022, will you be using these, or will you go back to either transacting in cash physically or going back to your checkbooks? So if you see, that's the thing about technology. It is not pandemic driven. Yes, pandemic has definitely accelerated our use of technology. It has definitely made us look for online solutions, but technology was used before, and technology will be used even after the pandemic. You had done online transfers, you had done some sort of payment wallets, you had done all those things even before pandemic hit, and you are going to go ahead and do it even after the pandemic is completely over. That's the thing about ODR as well. Yes, I do agree that the pandemic has accelerated the entire process of more and more people now looking at online ways of resolving disputes, but it's definitely here to stay. And let me put forth my argument with some statistics as well. If the existing mechanisms without the use of technology were effective and were adequate, we today would not have over 4 crore cases pending in courts. We would not have 40,000 cases being registered every single day in Indian courts. And we would not have. So let me tell you one more thing, that for every dispute that is registered in court, there are 7 more disputes that have nowhere to go. Either they don't know about how to resolve it, or they don't have access to courts, or they don't have access to some sort of a mechanism to help them resolve disputes. Where are these going to go? How are we going to solve it? Now, can you imagine that for every transfer that you're doing today on a wallet or on net banking or something else, if you had to manually do it, if you had to physically write checks for each of those times, you'd go crazy, because it's so inefficient. And these are the exact inefficiencies that ODR will continue to solve. They will continue to solve it even after the pandemic, and it's definitely here to stay, because the demand of disputes, the demand of resolution mechanisms itself is so much in our country, that definitely the use of technology has to be there in order to help these kind of disputes to actually be resolved. So let me just take a pause here. And Akhil, you've raised your hand. So do you want to ask a question, or this was in relation to the previous question? Or anybody else who has any questions so far, any thoughts, any other points that they would want to make? Okay, you can unmute yourself or use the chat box. Okay, then I'll proceed further. So Vaishnavi, I think this addresses your question in terms of whether ODR can be used in the pandemic or after the pandemic or no, or is it just a pandemic phenomena? Let me tell you very, very clearly and very, very evidently, it is definitely here to stay even after the pandemic. And it's not only me who's saying that, because I do work in the ODR space. It's also the Niti Aayog. So, if you would know, the Niti Aayog has released a draft report that talks about making ODR mainstream, making it mandatory in certain types of disputes, making the government disputes also some categories of this to mandatorily use ODR as a first method of resolving disputes. That is from the part of the Niti Aayog. Even the judiciary is taking various measures to actually promote online dispute resolution. And let me give you one example of it. Now, we all know that pre institution mediation is becoming mandatory, where for all commercial matters, before they actually register in courts, they will have to try mediation before, and only then will they be able to actually, proceed in courts. Now, for those matters, for these pre-institution mediations, also the judiciary is now recognizing online mediations for this. So the push for ODR is coming from every single sector in the country. The RBI now is looking at fully automated dispute resolution mechanisms for certain transactions that are being done online. SEBI has SEBI scores, which is their internal mechanism of resolving any disputes about any transactions in the BSE, NSE, in any of the stock exchanges. It is completely online, and there is no physical place for you to actually go and file those complaints. Talking of RTI, whilst RTI can be done manually, there's an entire mechanism in place to file your RTI application online, to do hearings online, to appeal online as well. So if you talk about any of the government sectors, or you talk about the judiciary, or you talk about universities, everyone is pushing for ODR, because that's clearly the only way that we can solve this problem in front of us, which is about disputes, and which is about they having no real place to go to resolve. And I'm not saying that ODR will solve this problem completely. No, definitely that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that it is going to give a more effective mechanism to people. It is going to give more access to people to participate in disputes that involve them. Let me give you today an example that your entire curriculum, your entire course is now being done online. And how is that happening? If tech was not there, you would have to probably waste a year, because you would not be able to come online and attend your classes, and there would be nowhere to go. So until the entire pandemic wave would subside, you would have to probably lose that much time. But today everything's going on track. And why is that? That is because technology or ed tech has reached where schools couldn't. Today, medtech or health tech has reached where hospitals and doctors physically can't. Today, net banking or fintech has reached where banks or NBFCs couldn't. And today, ODR is reaching where justice and where lawyers can't. And it is a reality in our country that lawyers and courts cannot reach to every nook and cranny of the country, especially in a country like India, which is the world's most litigious country. Let me repeat that: India is the world's most litigious country. And just imagine the volume of disputes. And do you really think courts, or do you really think more judges, more courts, more physical infrastructure can solve this problem? No, probably not. They are overburdened, they are doing their best, they are going out of their way to do it. But the demand itself, because of our population and because of the nature of generally the population here, is such that there has to be a more automated, a more effective, and a more efficient way of looking at these disputes, and that gap is filled by online dispute resolution. So here I'm going to take a moment's pause, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Anybody has any other views? Anybody has any experiences, any expectations? They agree to me, they don't agree to me. Any other thoughts?
Ma'am, do we have a mobile area?
Sorry, do we have a,
Mobile area.
like, are you saying that can ODR reach to places where otherwise are not accessible? Is that what your question is?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Vaishnavi, yes. Let me talk to you about some of the experiences that we've had at Resolve 360. So we've done a lot of resolutions so far, and when we started doing these resolutions online, our platform is fully online. The entire proceedings, the entire arbitration or mediation or conciliation is done fully online. And let me tell you this: when these processes were done, when we started doing these cases online, we always thought that people who would participate in these would be, people who understand how to navigate through technology. They'd probably be like a slightly younger, younger generation. They would probably be people who are more tech savvy. They would probably, for example, be English speaking audience. They would be from metro cities or something like that. Let me tell you this, that majority of the people who actually resolve their disputes on our platform do not belong in this category that I described. Many of them came from tier 3 cities as well. Many of them did not have any experience with technology except to learn to use, they just knew how to use WhatsApp and how to talk on the phone. That's pretty much what they knew. They did not have bandwidth for even video conferencing. They did not have those facilities, nothing. They had a basic smartphone and they've still managed to settle their disputes with a large organization on the other hand and get a successful resolution. And had these proceedings been done in person and they would have got a notice or like a letter at home, they would have no idea how to participate. They do not have the means to go to courts, and ultimately their assets would be seized when that arbitral award would be executed. And today, just by way of simple smartphone, they can participate in the proceedings and actually find a way to settle with a large organization on the other hand. And these are the results that I'm telling you from the cases that we've handled. This is the impact that any technology can have. Today, even if you see today, edtech or medtech or fintech is not only catering to tier 1 cities or to a younger generation or to only English speaking audiences. They are catering across the country. And similarly, ODR is giving access to justice, probably for the first time in the country, to every single person. It's kind of bringing people on the same footing now, because everybody can participate, everybody can understand what's going on in their own dispute, and everybody can have a say in their disputes. And you can see this across, all ODR players are doing a very good job in ensuring that this is not only for a specific sector of people, but this is actually available to everybody to access in a very simplified manner. So Vaishnavi, I
Hello.
hope that answers your question. Yes, Mr. Akhil.
Yeah, I have a couple of things for you.
Sure.
One is online dispute resolution is basically a kind of a process to resolve the dispute. Okay, that's
Okay.
I understand. Online is we basically provide a kind of an online platform eliminating some physical contact, so that the person who is at remote stage utilizing the whatever available easiest technology, he can connect with the other party, and some the dispute can be resolved, right?
Yes.
But I want to know that actually your company is what kind of into the business of what kind of resolution of the dispute. So what kind of disputes you are coming across, and you are and how you are doing that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Akhil, for your question. Yes, I absolutely agree that yes, the processes that were otherwise done in person are now done online by way of any ODR platform, including ours. That is very correct. Your understanding about how you described it is very, very correct. I'll talk about few of the disputes that we've handled. We've done a variety of disputes. All of them have been civil in nature, firstly. We've done a lot of loan matters, such as if there are defaults in any personal loans, business loans, if two-wheeler loans, any asset-based finances, credit card disputes. So the entire spectrum of loans, we've looked at that. We've done insurance disputes as well, where some claims are due by the insurance company and there's some sort of a negotiation that is required between the parties. And we've done business disputes. That's one category, that is all commercial disputes. Coming to the other side of civil disputes, we have looked at certain family matters as well, certain property matters, and certain rental matters. So that's the gamut of disputes that we've handled at Resolve 360.
How people approach you?
Correct.
Like
Yes.
your services are hired by the insurance company, financial banking sector, or non-banking finance company, or the individual can also approach you.
Correct. Yes. So very
Because
relevant.
sorry, one more
Yes.
thing. In mostly what I see from the banking or financial sector, when the parties got defaulted after the NPA, they will appoint. They have two basically remedies. One is DRT, another one is an arbitration proceeding.
Yes.
So generally they go with an arbitration because it's a cheaper remedy. The arbitrator somewhere sitting at his office issue of notices, and something is going on.
Right.
So Uh, yes, there are few arbitrators good enough to provide an online interaction with some any available online available platform, even a WhatsApp video call. Some are
Yes.
saying no, you have to come here for physical. So
Yes.
basically, I just want to know about like how you people are into this and how you will getting the business. I'm a practicing advocate, so my question is little on a different footing.
Sure, sure. No, I'd be happy to talk about it. So, in effect, we are an independent third party. So, we are like an independent ODR institution that provides arbitration and mediation services where we provide the administrative and technical support. And we have empaneled arbitrators and mediators with us who actually conduct these proceedings on our platform. So we've built the entire technology, infrastructure, rules, and processes around it, and they are the ones who get empaneled with us, and they are the ones who actually resolve these disputes. That's the first thing. And second thing is a business can also approach us and refer their disputes on the platform, and then the entire process of arbitration or mediation kicks in, where the other party is then invited and the proceedings are conducted. Or if an individual does come to know about us, then they can also approach us. So of course we don't market as such to the masses, because that becomes commercially not very viable. So if an individual does come across an online platform like us, they can also approach us and we look at those disputes as well. So of course the larger volumes of disputes which are in relation to loans or something come from the institution side. But when it comes to other kind of disputes, like if there are any rental matters or family matters or those kind of matters, then one of the disputing parties typically approaches us. That's the cycle that we've seen.
Ma'am, do you even look after consumer disputes?
Sure. So consumer disputes does have consumer forums that they typically go to, and we specifically don't cater to consumer disputes. But if anybody does come to us and they have some complaint in relation to a particular organization, then we definitely look at it. Like we
No,
had
but
somebody
you
who.
told recently you said about that you are also for insurance dispute. So basically, the insurance dispute comes under consumer protection.
Correct. So, in terms of claim settlements, like for example, if you look at motor accident claims, so a lot of them can be resolved by way of a negotiation. So that
How
entire
can that possible?
negotiation,
No. How can that possible? How
so
can
those,
insurance company through any third party go to a applicant or a claimant and say that okay, forget about 2 lakh, we'll settle in 1.5 lakh, and if he is also agree,
yes.
if he
So
also
these are,
agree, then also he is not barred that he can approach motor accident claim tribunals.
so they have to go
Similarly,
to motor
consumer act.
accident claims tribunals. There's no doubt about that. But
Hmm.
whilst the proceedings are going on over there, if all the papers are clear, if there's no other objection, they can come to a common agreement of an amount and then get the matter resolved in the next upcoming Lok Adalat. So
No, in
nothing
MS it
stops
is
them.
not possible, ma'am.
Yeah, we've actually looked at those matters, and in MACT also, a large number of these kind of claims are actually arrived at by way of parties agreeing to an amount, and
But
that particular thing,
there
the
is absolutely no even no any provision in Motor Vehicle Act about such kind of an practice.
correct. So here, the when the parties agree, nothing stops them from agreeing to a particular amount and then approaching the Lok Adalat and getting the entire claim settled at that price. So nothing stops them, and it's very very rampant, happens across. And if you also see the matters that go in Lok Adalats, a lot of them are in relation to insurance settlements also.
It's
Ma'am,
a nice interaction, and I would like to have your contact details. And let's
Sure,
see, it's
I'll be
interesting.
sharing that.
It's something new and it's interesting for me. Huh?
Yes.
Thanks, Namita.
Thank you, Mr. Akhil, and thank you for your questions. And I will be sharing my details at the end. So thank you. Yes, Vaishnavi, you were asking something.
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, whether medical negligence cases can be solved with the help of ADR, because since even they come under the purview of Consumer Protection Act, right?
Yes. So nothing stops any type of disputes from being solved by way of a private negotiation between parties. So if parties consent to looking at having a word out of court and to exploring a common solution to the problem, nothing stops that. And those matters also can be fully settled. So yes, a lot of medical legal issues even today are actually, they are of course fewer in number, but many of them don't prefer to actually go to court and fight it out. They prefer to have like a private settlement with a private mediator, both talk about their sides and come to a common solution. So there have been a lot of instances where medical legal issues also have been settled outside of court. However, we've not handled those kind of matters so far.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam,
Adit,
I have
yeah,
a question, madam.
sure,
Madam, that it is a number of times we heard that the government is a compulsive litigant,
correct.
and whether what is the scope to bring them into this dispute resolution mechanism, and
Correct.
Yeah,
whether they are
Loknath sir, please introduce yourself so you can come to know who is asking
yes,
this
sir.
question. Yes.
Madam, I am Lognathan. I am a GST officer and LLB third semester student from Parul
Okay,
University.
okay.
See, madam, my
Uh,
question is that
yeah,
number of times we have heard that government is a compulsory litigant. Every time and everywhere they go for litigation. Even they know that they may or may not win.
yes.
And whether if they come into this online dispute resolution mechanism, whether their sovereign functions can be compromised, whether that government going to trust on these private individuals who are going to adjudicate the case. Yes,
Okay.
madam. This.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question, sir. Pleasure to meet you. Let me talk about it this way. Yes, I completely agree that government is a litigant. In fact, over 40 to 70% of the litigation in India has at least one of the parties as the government. So, very well acknowledged. Yes, that is the reality in India. And from what we understand is that now various departments of the government are looking at adopting ODR. So, let me give you one example. If you look at the MSME Samadhan module, so in those kind of matters, the government is firstly providing some sort of infrastructure for parties to resolve it. That is number one. Second is when it comes to the government, yes, they are looking at ODR, but that process of them actually resolving their own disputes by way of an ODR platform, that will happen over time. So right now we understand that that is not the case, that is not happening. But even the Niti Aayog report touches upon it, where at least certain categories and certain thresholds of disputes below which those will now compulsorily have to be resolved online, and especially when they involve intergovernmental or interdepartmental issues, and if they are of a smaller quantum, then those kind of disputes will compulsorily now be required to be resolved by way of an online mechanism. Now, how that will pan out, we'll have to go ahead and see. But yes, the government has also acknowledged that they need to look at ODR mechanisms, how they will actually do it and implement it, and phase wise mechanism of implementing it. We'll have to see going forward. So, as of now, that is not the case, but going forward, for sure, that is going to happen.
Ma'am, one more question.
Yeah,
Okay. I think rightly you said in even in medical negligence cases, the ODR platform is effective. So
correct.
do you have any experience handling medical negligence cases, and whether the victim approached or doctor approach is used?
Yeah. Yeah. So I did mention earlier that these happen out of court, but we've not had any medical legal cases yet.
I have little different opinion in this as
Sure.
far as medical negligence is concerned. For any online or offline dispute resolution mechanism, there has to be kind of an arbitration agreement having a proper valid arbitration clause. As far as
Correct.
medical negligence matters are concerned, there is a specific provisions in consumer code that the medical negligence matter cannot be taken up as a mediation conciliation effort. It should be properly fighted. So I think I'm referring into that. Uh,
Yeah.
so
So,
medical negligence matter cannot be uh, taken up as an arbitration matter or for conciliation or
yeah.
for
So,
ODR.
yes. So medical issues normally are not arbitrated. That is for sure. But nothing stops the parties from agreeing to kind of talk it out with
No,
the
no, there
help
is
of
a
an independent party. Yes.
specific provision of barring medical negligence matter
That is only
for
in case,
arbitration and
correct.
conciliation.
That is in case of death or certain other severe grievances. But in case of other medical legal issues, mediation is very widely adopted in certain areas specifically. So that does happen, and there have been instances of cases, although we've not dealt with any medical legal case, as I said earlier also.
Okay.
But yes, the entire, at least the Indian Medical Association does have certain collaborations with certain mediators, and they do look at, they do explore mediation in the few cases that they get as well. So yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Likhita, I hope I've said your name correctly. You raised your hand. You had a question.
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay.
Good afternoon, firstly. Ma'am,
Good
I would,
afternoon.
this is Likita. I'm studying in the final year of 3 years LLB. I
Yeah.
would start my question with, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the past for 30 minutes you have been dealing with the civil things. But thing I wanted to ask about is actually the family cases take lots of time and it involves
Yes.
the future of both the parties.
Yeah.
So where can we see ODRs or ADRs? And because of the pandemic recently, the family courts are getting closed, and that is affecting the future. Like if people are going for the divorces, and though the matter is in the final stages, because it's not functioning offline, it's just getting a next date, and that indirectly spoil like has an effect on the future also. So where can we see ADRs and ODRs on this perspective, ma'am?
Sure. Very relevant question. Yeah, thank you for your question. Yes, very true. In terms of family settlements, ADR and ODR specifically provide very good solutions for certain types of cases. As you said, for example, divorces or separations. In those cases, firstly, the court also mandates a mediation process before. So ADR can be used directly at that stage itself, which is actually mandated by law, at least in a few states. Secondly, coming to ODR, why it provides effective solutions is because at times the problem is so grave that parties don't even want to see each other. And when you are doing it by way of an online platform, they don't have to sit in the same room. So that actually facilitates a faster resolution because they are not face to face. They can talk to the mediator, and at the end they just meet virtually. So it provides a different kind of a comfort in certain types of cases. So those cases are very effectively resolved by way of online ways as well. Especially certain cases that involve domestic abuse and violence. In those kind of cases, the victim often doesn't want to be in the same room also as the other person. And in those kind of cases, ODR has proved to be very, very effective. So yes, in family cases also, ADR and ODR are providing very effective solutions. And not
Mom, if
only
you
in
don't
separation.
mind, in
Sure.
continuation to my previous question, like
Sure.
I just wanted to know the practicality of this. It is mandatory that only the courts have the only power to grant the divorces. So is it
Yes.
like we'll have, for example, I approached you, you will make a decision or like that, and with that decision, are we again approaching the courts for the final decree?
See, for the final decree in case of a separation, you will need court validation. But what ODR or ADR can add value in is the terms of the divorce. So it can be sort of like the mutual terms on which the settlement is finalized and agreed. That entire process can be done by way of ADR or ODR. But the final authority, the final stamp would be required by the court. That's correct.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks. Also, in terms of Aditya Sin's question, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. In terms of limitations and challenges or issues in ODR, yes, it does have its limitations and challenges. There's no denying that because no mechanism can be completely without limitations or challenges. That is absolutely acknowledged and valid. I'll talk about a few challenges that we faced, a few limitations that do exist. Firstly, the access to technology, that is the number one challenge because there are still people who don't have access to internet, who don't have access to WhatsApps, emails. I mean, these are the basic things that you need for ODR to actually happen. And somebody who doesn't have access to those, that does become a challenge in ODR for sure. But that is improving. That is improving by way of infrastructure, that's improving by way of awareness and by way of education as well. That is one. Another big issue that we face in ODR is the awareness. So awareness, right from even in larger cities to even the smallest of towns, the awareness about ODR and its validity, its legal enforcementability, all of those are still issues. But of course, that is growing. That is growing by way of the government, by way of the judiciary, by way of even private institutions like ourselves. We are looking at how we can further promote ODR and make it normal. Today, it is still at a very, very nascent stage because of which people don't have too many questions about it. In fact, a lot of lawyers also are still not very clear about it. They don't, sometimes they don't recommend it, all of that. But that is changing with time. But yes, these are some of the limitations and challenges, but we are moving towards overcoming that for sure. Okay, any more questions or thoughts before we move on?
Madam,
Yeah. Yes, yes, Mr.
Madam,
Yogi.
whether this dispute resolution mechanism only entertains original dispute, or even when we go for appeal, we win or loss in high court, again we may come to this online dispute after
Uh,
adjudicating by higher courts.
So typically what happens is the dispute at the stage of inception is the first time where ODR mechanisms can kick in. Second part is either whether court recommends a mediation, which is like, for example, court annex mediations. At those stages, also mediation or any other mechanism can kick in, but an arbitration cannot kick in at that stage. So, like, if parties want to explore a settlement, they can do it even if the matter is pending in the Supreme Court. All of this is done without any impact to the ongoing proceedings. So, that is typically how it works.
Madam, that my question was that when in any matter, if for example, Gujarat High Court adjudicates and decide the issue,
Right.
and the both the parties are agreed, they are not going prospecting to approach the Supreme Court. In that case, whether they come for this tribunal
So in that case, they would not
arbitration.
require this. In that case, they would not require this. In that case, the dispute would have been decided and agreed upon by the parties, by the court itself. So why would they look for another mechanism to resolve the dispute? Because it doesn't exist anymore. So only when parties are not in agreement or the court has not decided, then those are times where they can look at exploring a word outside of court.
Madam, next question is when a dispute arises, we have to file appeal or anything within the Limitation Act. Whether that provision is applicable under this dispute under online.
Yes. So the limitation period applies as is. How it would apply in in-person proceedings, the same limitation period even applies in case of an online matter as well. So, for example, if any recovery is barred by limitation, then you cannot just, just because you're doing it online, you cannot then recover the money at that stage if you're already barred by limitation. So online is just a mechanism of resolving disputes, just like how in-person proceedings are just a mechanism to resolve disputes. Same way, online is just a mode or a mechanism. Like, for example, just to compare it to the banking industry, if you write a check or do an NEFT, these are just different mechanisms for transferring funds. The laws around it or the regulations around it won't change, whether it is a check or an NEFT. So same way, whether you're meeting in person to do an arbitration or whether you're doing it online, these are just modes and mechanisms that promote convenience and ease and effectiveness. There's no other difference in ADR and ODR.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir, in terms of your question as to what is the revenue model of Resolve 360, we charge per dispute. That's typically how the model works. And then we have certain empaneled arbitrators and mediators. Then a part of the fee goes towards that, and a part of the fee is for technical and administrative support that is provided by our platform. So that's how the fee function works at Resolve 360.
Okay. I was listening to one of the founder of ODR, the platform. So they were, I think, catering into NB, the financial institutions, companies. So they were telling they have reduced the cost like 30 to 40%. Like,
Yes, that's correct. So that benefit, I think, is across the ODR spectrum. There is definitely a reduction in direct costs. That is number one. There's also the time that it takes. So otherwise, in-person arbitrations often take a few months at the least and go up to 12 or 18 months. We brought that time significantly down to under 2 months. That's typically the time frame that we look at, even if the matter is contested. So that's the time cost I've spoken about, and the ease and effectiveness. So any use of technology does promote effectiveness and convenience, which I'm sure all of us have experienced in some field or the other. Similarly, ODR also gives that kind of convenience to the disputing parties as well. And of course, the access, because in-person proceedings are often inaccessible by the responding party. So let's say, as you said, like a bank or an NBFC will have access to it, but a defaulting party may not even have access to help them in terms of participating in the arbitration or something like that. ODR does help them with that access. So these are just some of the direct benefits of ODR vis-a-vis other proceedings. Yeah. So, to quickly talk about myself, I know we are a little short on time, but I did have a presentation in mind, but I'll quickly talk about it due to paucity of time. I actually come from the field of chartered accountancy and law. And as a chartered accountant, I worked in a luxury goods industry. So it was a CA firm that primarily catered to the diamond and jewelry industry. And I did my articleship also there. And after CA, I pursued law and continued working there. And in those 3 4 years, I saw that some of the companies that were at the top of their game in 3 4 years actually had to file for bankruptcy. And when we try to analyze as to what happened so drastically wrong, what went so drastically wrong in a matter of a few years itself, the crux of it all boiled down to mismanaged disputes. And when I dug more into the problem, I realized that this is something which is right from the smallest of the businessman to the largest of MNCs face in our country, which is the lack of an appropriate and effective dispute resolution mechanism. Of course, the courts are doing their best and they are doing a great job. There's no denying that. But the severe backlog, the severe procedural delays, the paper heavy mechanisms, all of those are certain problems that exist. But on one hand, when there are problems, on the other hand, there are also opportunities waiting to be solved. And that's where the concept of Resolve 360 came about. We are three co-founders. Along with me, there's Bhavin and Aman. Three of us co-founded Resolve 360. And I still remember, to quickly talk about the actual story of how we started Resolve 360. Bhavin's father had some personal matter of his in the Supreme Court, and Aman and I had gone with him. And over there, the matter was going on for about 30 years. And the Supreme Court judge kind of told Bhavin that, your father started the litigation. Why don't you accept the settlement offer? Because if you don't, your child will have to conclude it. And that kind of was like a lightning bolt in our heads, saying that it's actually not a legal issue anymore in India, it's actually a legacy issue. And how actually mechanisms, technologies, and innovation can be brought about in finding more effective ways for people to participate in disputes and finding a way forward and resolving it and putting an end to the entire dispute. So, to sort of create a layer that the first resort of any disputes should be an out of court mechanism, should be a convenient and an effective mechanism. And if that fails, or for certain more severe issues, the courts always exist. But for even the smallest of disputes, there is no need to run to the courts and burden them. And the entire process just then it's like a whirlwind keeps getting added. So that's when we conceptualized Resolve 360. We realized that technology has to be involved for us to actually scale it, for us to make it accessible across the country. So that is how we came about Resolve 360. And what we simply do is an online dispute resolution platform where we do electronic arbitrations, e-mediations, and conciliations. And we ensure that parties can find a way forward in a quick, effective, and economical way. So that's just summarizing about my journey and what we do at Resolve 360. And I'm going to quickly go to the chat box and just share a few details like my LinkedIn ID, email ID. So if you have any more questions or if you have any doubts, please feel free to reach out. Even if you want to experience what it's like to be part of the ODR movement or what we do at Resolve 360, or you would try, if you want some sort of an internship, I'd be more than happy to speak to you offline and we could then take the conversation forward. But irrespective of what you choose to do give thought to the fact that technology is the way forward, is the way present as well, not just in the future. And please look at how you could explore technologies in the work that you're doing, how you can actually suggest ODR, and how you can actually truly give more effective solutions to your clients. So I think that's it from my end. And I was told this has to end at 12:30. So if at all you have any more questions, I'm happy to spend a few more minutes in case whoever can stay. Yes, in terms of internships, I would love to speak to anyone who's interested, and we could explore on how we can take that conversation forward. We would love for even all the law students to experience how ODR can provide some effective solutions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other questions? We are dot on time, but it was very good interaction. Let me tell you, it was like, from the beginning, it was interactive one, and that's a really fruitful one, right? Putting questions
Correct.
so, we can get the better answer rather than going for PPT or any kind of, presentation.
Correct.
Any, yeah, this, I don't know about the PPT. Have you, like, any question,
Yeah.
query?
Yeah. Even if you have any questions later, I'd be more than happy to address it. I think the presentation was more on my journey, not on Prisol 360. So I don't know if it'll be that relevant, but I'd be more than happy to talk more about Prisol 360, and you can find a lot of details on our website as well. But in case you want to learn more about Prisol 360 or look at how we can work together, collaborate together, we'd be more than happy to take that conversation forward. Uh,
Can I say
yeah.
something?
Sure,
Gupta
sure,
sir,
sir.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
it's a very interesting session. It's a very new concept, though legally there are a lot of challenges. I don't know Namita ma'am and her team how legally well equipped or having legal knowledge or practice about in law. But yes, this particular area has its own horizons to explore, and I wish them good luck. And it's a kind of a learning session for me too, and it's an extremely new idea. Thanks,
Thank you, sir. Just,
thanks,
just
Dr. for bringing such a valuable thoughts on our platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
just one more thing on that aspect. In case of the legal validation bit, we have been recognized by the Department of Justice, Government of India, after they've done an absolute legal thorough validation of every aspect of our platform. On our advisory board also, we have some legal luminaries who've actually looked at the platform, the way we do things, and given an absolute validation of everything that we do. So
I'm
yes,
about to
that.
join a company like you or start something own.
Oh, you must. There is a lot of work to be done in this field. So the more the merrier, because it is definitely required for sure. So
So I came
Thanks
to
a
know
lot.
about
yeah.
the
So
platform right through the camp, Siri Ramachan Mangal Das. So
yes.
in second round, so I came to know, I approached Miss Namita and then contacted. I had an interview also. So she spends a valuable time already share her interview, how they started and their journey, different questions I already put up. Any other last question, query?
Okay. Before we end, would it be okay if I request everybody to just start their cameras if possible, so we could take a nice picture? Uh,
Yes.
whoever For whoever it would be possible, I would love to see you, and we could have a nice, memorable picture.
Students, please start your camera for a while. Vaishnavi, Likita, Loknath sir, Jose.
Okay. Thank you. We'll just take a quick picture.
You need to take again
Okay.
because
Yes, yes, sir. If you could take and you could share with me, that's fine. Okay.
okay, we are done.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir, for having me. And in case there are any follow-up questions, so you
Sure,
could get in touch with me and let me know. I will be happy to address them.
definitely.
Yes. And thank you again for having me. And I wish that we can all meet in person very soon.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you
Yes.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I once again on behalf of the Parul Institute of Law, uh, thank you for sparing your valuable time and thank you all the participants. And it was a very
Yes.
fruitful discussion. I would say not compared to other previous session we conducted, start from presentation and the end and 2 3 questions, but it was something very different. Like no need of any presentation or the proper PPT. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for joining. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for attending and wish you all the very best.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for joining. Thank you.
Thank you. Gupta sir, there is something